Shooting is getting national attention. This time a dashboard camera caught all of it. It happened late last month during a traffic stop in southern New Jersey. Now, the video just came out this week, and as so often happens, it does answer some questions, but it raises still others. A discussion on it shortly, but first a report from Randy Kay.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Pulled over in a Jaguar for allegedly running a stop sign, a routine traffic stop. Bridgeton, New Jersey police officer Brahim Days on the passenger side of the car.
Hey, you got a driver's license?
Just seconds later, the officer jumps back, pulls his gun, seemingly stunned by what he saw inside the car. It's all captured on police dashcam video on December 30th. This is where everything changes between the officers and passenger Jerome Reed, a 36-year-old African-American man who had been in trouble with the law before.
Show me your hands. Show me your hands. Show me your hands. Don't move. Don't you move. Don't you move. Get him out the car, Raj. We got a gun in this glove compartment.
A gun in the glove compartment. Watch as Officer Days on the right, with his own weapon in his right hand, uses his left hand to pull out from the car what appears to be a large silver gun. Watch again.
Don't you move.
Suddenly, the warnings escalate.
I'm telling you, I'm going to shoot you. You're going to be dead. I'm telling you. You reach for something, you're going to be dead. I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
Officer Days appears to know Reed, likely because he was one of the arresting officers last August when Reed was picked up on charges including resisting arrest and drug possession. Reed's also been arrested 6 times by Bridgeton police since 2009 and reportedly spent about 13 years in prison for shooting at police officers. On the dashcam video, Reed can be heard telling the officer he isn't reaching for anything. Then this.
He's reaching. He's reaching. Show me your hands.
It's unclear, but Reed sounds like he's saying he's going to get out of the car, his hands at his chest.
No, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. Don't move. Don't you move.
Shots fired. Officer Days, who is black, appears to fire first, possibly as many as 6 shots. Officer Roger Worley, who is white, appears to fire once from the other side of the police car. Reed collapses on the ground. The driver of the car, who had both his hands visible out the window, is handcuffed. The chorus of angry bystanders grows. New Jersey allows use of deadly force when the officer reasonably believes such action is immediately necessary to protect the officer or another person from imminent danger of death or serious bodily harm. For now, both officers are on administrative leave, while investigators look into how a routine traffic stop ended with 1 man dead, all in just about 90 seconds. Randy Kay, CNN, New York.
Well, precisely because people look at that video, see different things. We've got a lot to talk about with our panel. Joining us now, legal analyst Mark O'Mara and Sonny Hostin. She, of course, a former federal prosecutor. He's a defense attorney, best known for defending George Zimmerman. Also, former LAPD officer David Klinger, who currently teaches criminal justice at the University of Missouri in St. Louis. Sonny, do you believe the police officer was justified in shooting this man?
You know, I don't think that's clear. When you look at a case like this, the question remains the same. Was the force justified? And when you look at the use of force policy in New Jersey, that officer had to believe that he was in imminent, immediate danger of death or great bodily injury, Anderson. And the bottom line is he's getting out of the car. They've already retrieved the gun that they found in the glove compartment, and his hands are up. I've said it time and time again. Hands up is the universal gesture for surrender. Why, if someone is surrendering, why do you have to shoot to kill?
You know, Sonny, it's interesting. We talked obviously a lot about race in the wake of Ferguson, but in this shooting, the officer who fired the fatal shots is black. The passenger who was killed, also black. Do you think that changes somehow the way people are going to look at this?
You know, I don't think it should. Certainly, many times we talk about race when it comes to interactions with police officers, and certainly there is that racial bias that sometimes plays a part, that implicit bias that sometimes plays a part. But in large part, this is an issue of policing. And Anderson, we've talked about this time and time again. we understand that police officers have a very difficult job. Everyone understands that. They are scared as well. But when you have a video like this, which in my view shows an officer who is very, very agitated, very tense, using unprofessional language, expletive-ridden commands, screaming at this young man, I've got to tell you, it just doesn't seem to me that the appropriate decorum was taking place. And that, for me, calls into question this entire incident.
Mark, I mean, does the language matter? I mean, a gun was found in this vehicle. The guy who was killed, he reportedly served a lengthy amount of time in prison for shooting at police when he was a teenager, and one of the officers involved in this incident knew who he was, had arrested him for a different crime just last year. I mean, do you buy Sonny's point of sort of the decorum?
Well, what's interesting to look at this case, you see how it develops. I disagree with Sonny to the extent that this officer was all upset. Actually, he was quite calm when he came up to the scene. I think you recognize Jermaine Reed as somebody not only who he had arrested before a drug charge, but much more importantly, that he was somebody who had shot at police officers before, and that he's a felon. And when you see a gun 2 feet away from a felon, that's going to ramp up the officer's fear.
Can I address that? Because, we're again blaming the dead guy, blaming the victim. We're going over his past criminal history and saying that is appropriate to take, that should be an appropriate measure of what happened. Bottom line is Martha Stewart spent time in prison as well, right? Should Martha Stewart then, when she gets stopped, get shot, not be given the benefit of the doubt? I just think it's ridiculous that Sonny, Mark is saying
Sonny,
because
isn't that apples?
someone who had a history, he should be shot.
Sonny, isn't that apples and oranges? I mean, I guess if Martha Stewart was buying stocks, you might give her, a little closer inspection on her stock performance and what stock she's picking. I mean, if a guy has been arrested for shooting at police and a gun is found in the vehicle, but those are elements that clearly would be in somebody's mind if they have that information. No?
Look, I think we have to make it clear. He was 13 years old when that happened. We don't know all of the facts surrounding that. He spent time in prison, paid his debt to society, got arrested again, paid his debt to society, and now is like every other citizen. So should we say it's okay that he got shot?
Can I jump in? The relevant question is this. Was the officer reasonable in using deadly force? And in looking at that question, then the officer's perception is very relevant. And if the officer's perception is, this is Jermaine Reed, who has shot at officers before, who is a convicted felon, and it was 2 feet away from a gun, that's what makes it relevant. I don't think we can look and say, well, we only killed a previous felon. I agree with that, but it's what he was thinking in the split second that he had to think it, and that Reed refused to listen to a number of very specific commands.
And to follow up on that point, what the Supreme Court has ruled and what all officers are trained, and then in terms of a review of it, it's the totality of the circumstances. So we do need to know what was going on in this officer's mind. How much information did he know about this individual? How much information did he know about his criminal past? My understanding is this officer had, in fact, arrested him before. So my suspicion would be that he would know about the previous time that he spent for shooting at the police. And so you look at the totality of the circumstances, as your other guest was pointing out, in terms of a felon, a gun in close proximity. Officers are trained that when you have an ex-felon with a gun, that's a danger sign. Then we have a felon who spent hard time for shooting at police, even greater threat level, and all that would be reasonable for a reasonable officer to believe. Then the question becomes, at the moment that these shots are fired, was it reasonable for him to perceive that his life was in jeopardy? And if he's told to stay in the car and he doesn't, he in fact forces his way out of the car, and hands up is one thing versus hands coming towards. And I can't tell from that video exactly what was going on. And so that's why I think, once again, we have to wait to see what the entire investigation discloses about all these crucial points.
All right, David Klinger, I appreciate you being on. Mark O'Mara, Sonny Hostin, always. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.